Stand up. Stand up. The more you do it, the less you fall down. Stand up. Stand up. Put your head in the clouds and your feet on the ground. Stand up. Stand up. For the time of your life, you turn it up loud. Stand up. Stand up. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter from deep in the bowels of our underground lair, where we got the answers you're looking for. I don't know what the questions are yet.
Yeah, that's Jeopardy? You got to ask the questions?
I guess so.
Jay, how are we this week?
Oh, pretty good. You?
Well, I'm doing fine because I came back from vacation.
Yeah, I bet that was nice.
Down in Biloxi, Mississippi. And chalk up another state.
Yes.
That I've been to, by the way.
Oh, so you haven't been to Mississippi before?
No, that was the 36th state that I have been to. So 36 out of the 50.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the ones I haven't been to. Alaska and Hawaii.
Yeah, me neither.
New Mexico.
Yeah, haven't been there.
Oklahoma.
Haven't been there.
I've never been northeast of New York, so like the 5 or 6 little states up there.
I've never been northeast of Maryland and D.C., so yeah, that whole area for me too.
Then there's a handful. I've never been to Alabama.
I've been there. Yeah.
Okay, never been to Arkansas.
I've been there.
And I believe West Virginia is the other state. Okay.
I went whitewater rafting.
Nah, you were to have a dinner at the Rockefellers. That's what you were doing.
Right.
No, there might be one or two others, but for the most part, so that I know it's the 36th state that I've been to, and I'll tell you what,
North and South Carolina, Washington, and Oregon, I've also never been to.
Okay, so. I went to those when I worked for Best Buy and I traveled.
Utah as well.
Been to Utah.
Okay.
By the way, what's the best and worst state you've been to? Because I kind of have a little something about being in Mississippi, but what do you think? What's the biggest dump you went to?
Well, the biggest dump is Wisconsin, of course.
Come on, Milwaukee, there's a bar on every corner. That can't be that bad.
Sorry for all of our Wisconsin listeners. I'm sorry. But you got to go there, right, when you live in Minnesota.
I suppose.
A little dig now and again. Goodness, best and worst. Man, that's tough. Because I've loved things about, I think, just about everywhere I've went. You know,
probably, but I like. Let me answer. You think here?
Okay.
If I had to pick a couple places that I did not like, New Jersey has to rank up there.
Oh, I'm sure. I haven't been there, but I can just imagine.
Just a New York wannabe. There's nothing to see, nothing to do. It's just kind of a dumpy place. I just did not enjoy being there.
Huh.
I do not like Portland, Oregon, and I don't know. It's not political so much. It is maybe more now than it was when I was there. But you talk about a city where it rains every day. It's glue, in my opinion anyway. If I could pick, I could kind of say the same thing about Delaware, kind of another state like that. If I could pick, I really like Denver, Colorado. I really liked it there. It was a great town to go to. It's funny how much I like Chicago, which is funny to say.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because it's a big city in the Midwest. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Loved Dallas. Loved Texas.
Yeah.
And loved South Dakota. I love South Dakota. I honeymooned there. My wife and I actually went all the way to Yellowstone. But we went to Deadwood, and I love the Badlands. Great places to go. I think South Dakota's an awesome state.
Yeah, hard for me to pick a favorite. I also love Colorado. I love South Dakota. I love Wyoming.
Beautiful.
Montana. That's all just so beautiful. I love and hate California, if that makes any sense. I love the ocean. I love sitting by the ocean and just listening to the waves come in.
Sure.
There's something about that that's just one of the most peaceful things on earth.
I will say this, I like lakes more than oceans, but I see what you're saying, though. I mean, I was just by the Gulf of Mexico in Biloxi down in the very, very south part of Mississippi.
Texas, I loved. Austin was a fun town, even though, Texans don't claim Austin as part of Texas. Dallas, I did like, but yeah, I had a lot of fun in Austin for sure. Went during South by Southwest. We were playing down there with a group I was with, and
cool.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. Bands everywhere all the time, and
so what do you not like?
What do I not like? Well,
if there's one place you like, oh God, I hope I never, other than Gary, Indiana, if there's a place, I just don't want to go back to.
I wasn't a big fan of Chicago / Gary, Indiana. Yeah. Indiana just seems like it takes forever when you have to drive through it. I love Kentucky. It's a beautiful, beautiful state.
Agreed.
But getting there, the Indiana part of it, oofta. Nebraska is also not a lot of fun. I know the ads make it look wonderful, but most of it's cornfields.
Yeah.
But if that's the worst complaint, that North Dakota, it's all fields, at least east of Bismarck, that's not so bad. It's a whole lot better than the bad parts of California or New York or Detroit or Chicago. So
yeah, the reason I bring this up is the thing you get when you go down to a state like that, you get that Southern culture, which I think has been. I think the woke Yankees have tried to, that Southern feel.
Yeah,
I think has kind of like you're watching the Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah,
and I think that has been rooted out a lot in some areas of the South.
Yeah.
North Carolina and Virginia in particular, I think are states where the yuppies kind of, it's not I don't want to call it the good old boys, but it's very, Florida, I guess, has always been an exception to that maybe.
Yeah.
But it is, is there anything about the South that stands out to you that you really like? I
love it.
I have to say, I love the people down there.
Yeah.
The people down there were nice. I almost caught myself talking Southern. You just do.
Yeah, you do.
But I found it a very, very friendly place to go. You go to New York, everybody treats you like you go to a place like Biloxi, Mississippi, and it is, you couldn't be more welcomed by the people.
Right.
And it's just something totally different than a lot of places that I've been. And I found that when I've been throughout the South, I loved that about Texas. Texas is a place that in most of the state has not lost its Southern feel.
Yeah.
There's some places I think in Texas that have a little bit, but I think some haven't. A lot of it hasn't. So I hope the South, to an extent, I'm not talking about race here, I hope they keep their identity to a certain extent.
Well, it's more laid back, and you're right. I mean, they have tried to root a lot of that out, and to a degree, there's this Southern swagger, if you will, I call it, where they're going to be kind, they're going to be laid back, but you push them a little too far, they're not going to let themselves be pushed past a certain point. You know what I mean? Yeah,
but I just feel like things that made the South, whether it's a certain kinds of music, whether it's Tobacco Road, whether it's certain kinds of foods.
Yeah.
You kind of see the corporate sort of broad brush being down there more. I remember being in Atlanta a good 20 some odd years ago, maybe late 90s even. And Atlanta was like a different world. It was and I feel like it's changed a bit since then.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's changed for the better. I mean, it's sort of like Minnesota, love it, Minnesota or hate it. We have our own identity here. We fish, we hunt, we have 4 seasons.
Yeah.
We say and oofda, and
yeah.
There's something to being Minnesotan, and nobody's ashamed of it. And I think the way the South is treated by people in New York and in the yuppies in Boston.
Oh, they're just backwards.
Yeah, look down on them and think they're stupid. And there's just, but you know what? I'd take any city in the South ahead of that dump in New York.
Yeah.
Any day of the week. Much as I love the Yankees, I love screw New York.
Yeah. When I went to Mississippi, I went to an alligator farm. I went to one of the best barbecue places I've ever been to, called The Shed. Just
great
amazing.
food. Great food
Love
down there.
Mississippi.
NASCAR. I mean, there's just something about the identity of the South.
Loved Alabama. Stayed at Dauphin Island for a week.
Okay, now that's one of the few states I haven't visited. Oh, Louisiana's another state.
yeah.
I've never been to New Orleans.
Really? I've been to New Orleans.
My wife has a couple times. She wants that to be one of our next trips, to go to New Orleans, and I really would love to go there, very much so.
Well, it does have some Civil War significance.
Yeah, in fact, I was 4 miles from one of Jefferson Davis's. I didn't go there, but one of his, and I'd really like to go to one of his farms or whatever it was. And I would like to go to Louisiana to study Zachary Taylor, who's an ancestor of mine.
Yeah.
And I'd love to go to Vicksburg. That's the other thing, the Civil War sites.
Right.
I would love to see. I've only ones I've been to are Fort Henry and Fort Donelson on the Tennessee River. And but on my bucket list, Vicksburg, Gettysburg, Shiloh, and Antietam. I will get there, Jay, before I drop of a stroke. I will get there. So that's, but just, I don't know. There's so much history there, and you know what? There's history in New England. There's history in Philadelphia. There's history in a lot of places.
Yeah.
But I think the South is just it's unique that way. I just wish the South would stay more rural and less commercial, and not lose its identity that way. And I think it is to a degree. I think it's losing what it had. And maybe things just inevitably change. By the way, I never guessed the song.
No, you didn't.
I don't know who the hell it was anyway. So
Stand Up from David Lee Roth.
Oh, I know him.
Yeah.
That's a him, right? Not a they?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I know that.
As far as I know, he's a him.
Okay.
I don't think he's a they, them.
He identifies as a him.
I don't think he's a they, them.
By the way, I want to say something, Jay. On my show recently, I made election predictions.
You did.
But I'm going to add a few things that before we get going too far.
Yeah. So if you're listening to us now, you're going to have to at some point go over to the Andrew Richter show and listen to, it was the last
episode 35. Yeah, when we had Tanya Simons on the show. Yeah. And I did make a bunch of predictions. But I'm gonna add a few things that I think people ought to follow.
Are you changing anything?
No.
You're sticking with them. Okay.
No, but I'm sticking with everything. Like I said, you're the most squishy in Pennsylvania. I'm the most squishy in Georgia with predicting a result. I don't care who wins, but
the longer Georgia is going on, the more unsettled I feel about it.
I feel, and I'm going to say there's a tinge, this is, I don't know if this is controversial to say or not, but seeing the way Herschel Walker is getting attacked, there's a special hatred out there for black conservatives. And do you realize if Herschel Walker wins this race, there'll be more black Republican senators than Democratic senators?
Really?
Yes, because him and Tim Scott.
Yeah.
And I think there's only one Democrat. I can't think of the name. A senator now. Or maybe it's 2-2.
Okay.
But the Dems don't want that. And they're going after him in a Clarence Thomas-like way.
Oh, yes.
And just the vile hatred. And it's funny. You listen to Herschel talk, and he's very low key. He's very friendly. And I say that as a guy, as a Cowboys fan who watched the Vikings get fleeced by Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones.
Yeah, that still gets under my skin.
I will say, at the time, I thought Herschel was the missing piece. Yeah. And I do have to blame the Vikings for not using him properly and not completing the team. They had a Super Bowl caliber team at that time.
Yeah.
And they didn't win it, and that's on them.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a different podcast. We could break that trade down some other day. But Herschel is so... I remember watching him on The Apprentice. He's a very likable, articulate guy, and you see the things being said about him, and I have trouble believing they're talking about this guy.
Yeah. Well, did you see the new ad that came out?
No.
Okay.
No.
It shows a guy in a football tunnel, so obviously they're alluding to Herschel Walker, right? And then it's like one candidate in the Georgia Senate race has abused his wife and thinks that abortion is okay, and he's a Christian. And then it comes up Raphael Warnock. You think they're talking about Herschel, but they flipped it, and so it's really genius.
Okay, I'll have to YouTube that or something.
It was really good.
But I'm going to throw out there.
Yes.
There's a couple races that I think are sleepers that people ought to watch.
Okay.
Election night. First one is going to surprise me, and this is maybe not.
Okay.
But this is where I really criticize both parties for not being 50-state parties, and neither one of them are. So I'm going to tell you, New York is winnable.
Yeah.
And if you look at Lee Zeldin,
so you're talking governor race.
Talking a governor race. I want to share some of the very latest polls out of New York.
I tell you, Kathy Hochul she's bad.
But she's again doing the Tim Walz, Joe Biden hide in a bunker strategy,
right?
Which is really backfiring.
I hope so.
Quinnipiac, has it as a 4-point race right now.
Ooh.
50-46.
Yeah.
Trafalgar, who's been the most accurate pollster the last 3 election cycles, has it as a 2-point race.
In favor of the D's?
In favor of Hochul, but has Hochul down at 45%. There's another one that has it as a 6-point race. I mean, this race is winnable.
Yeah.
And if the Republican Party would put 10 cents in this state, Lee Zeldin would be the next governor. And New York's a similar state to Minnesota. They haven't won a statewide race in... George Pataki, was he the last one who did it?
Probably, yeah.
When he hasn't been the governor there for 15 years. I don't know what year he stopped. It doesn't matter, but it was a while ago because they had love client number 9, Elliot Spitzer, and they had Cuomo, and they had Patterson, and I mean but look at that as a race to watch on election night. I really think, I don't know that Zeldin will win it. Yeah. I'm not predictential. Huge upset that just 2 months ago nobody saw coming. Now, what do you think? I
think he's got a shot. When that violence happened, the shooting outside of his house, I thought that's where things really switched. Because the guy has been stabbed. and now having this happen outside his house with his kids home. But people don't like that. Leave people's kids out of it if they're still kids and not adults. Even
if they're adults, it's not their choice that their parents are running for something, I mean, it's one thing if they're actively campaigning. It's another thing... I don't know.
Well, I'm sorry, but like Hunter Biden, he's fair game.
Of course he's fair game. The guy's a crook.
Yeah.
He's a crook.
Absolutely.
And I might make another bold prediction or two.
Yes.
I'm going to hesitate to do this. But I'm going to make another Senate race to really, really watch. Actually, 2 of them.
Okay.
And I might have mentioned Colorado as a Senate race to watch.
Yeah.
Again, I think the Dem would be favored there and probably should be. But I think, again, it's another race. If anybody spent any money there, I don't know what would happen. Actually, let me take one more governor race, and that is Oregon.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to hands down predict tonight that the Republican wins there.
Yeah, well, the Republicans been ahead in the polls.
Yeah, but I have been skeptical of that until recently.
Right.
Because I always thought, okay, the Dems will come home. I
don't know that they're
not
motivated to vote.
They haven't moved in months over there, and I keep wondering what the heck is going on. But I'm going to throw out another race that I don't think anybody saw on the radar, and that's in Connecticut.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen what's gone on there?
Yeah.
Sidney Blumenthal's polling in the upper 40s, and I mean, again, the Republican candidate's still stuck in Jeff Johnson numbers. Got it on pretty good sources that Dems are shifting money to Connecticut, worried about.
Yeah.
Because Blumenthal was another guy, not really campaigning, didn't think he was in trouble, avoiding debates, hiding out, not answering questions, hiding from Joe Biden, and the Republicans campaigning their ass off, and it's showing. It's just starting to show. Again, I don't know that in Colorado or Connecticut, either one of them flip, but I think the fact that Dems have to spend money there tells you, it's going to weaken them in other places. And I just think you could see an upset. Look,
there's been rumblings of the same thing in Rhode Island as well.
Yeah, there has been. And you go to when the Dems or the Republicans, I can't remember who it was, won in Colorado in 2014. He lost in 2020.
Yeah.
But no one saw that coming. No one predicted that.
Yeah.
That the Republican would win that. So don't think it can't happen. I don't care who wins. I'm part of the cynical party.
Well, I care who wins because we have to have some sort of return to normalcy, or at least put a stop temporarily to the march forward of the left, because they're absolutely out of their gourd nuts.
Yeah, I worry, and I will predict that Republicans will misplay this hand.
Yeah.
They misplayed it under President Trump. Where was the repeal and replace Obamacare?
Yeah.
The president never got a bill to sign. They misplayed it in 2010. They misplayed it to an extent in the 90s. Even though they accomplished a lot of things, they let Bill Clinton take credit for it.
Yeah.
I don't have any confidence that they're going to.
They could screw it up. You're right.
I think by March, Republicans will be pissed off again. So,
it's
my prediction, but
I hope not.
And I think I said 25 seats in the House.
Yeah.
I think they're going to win more. I think it's breaking to more.
Yeah.
I think it could be 40 or more.
It could be.
If you look at Real Clear Politics, if you look at the toss-up races, there's like 40 of them.
Yeah.
I think 34 are Democratic seats. And I think they've written off about a dozen already. So, I mean, it could be a much, much bigger win than anybody sees coming. But,
yeah,
I'm always bearish on that just because, a wave in one state, you're talking about a congressional district that could be 3,000 miles away. I don't know that it's hard to nationalize that, I think, everywhere. So, I think they'll pick up more than what I thought. But again, governor of New York, look at that that ain't going to be called at 801. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So that's my prediction there.
Wow.
I think, Hochul might hold on, but she's in trouble big time.
Yep, she is.
And she hasn't been campaigning, hasn't been raising all the money. She should be burying Lee Zeldin, and she hasn't come close.
Another race that's tightened up that I didn't think that would. I hope that it would, because as many gaffes as she's had.
Hold on. Let me guess where you're going.
Yeah.
Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how that one's going to turn out. It's tightened up.
Michigan's a tough state because Republicans, it's like Wisconsin. Republicans always poll lower than they get.
Yeah.
And you're right. It could go that way. People forget. Michigan has a Republican legislature, too. And people forget that stuff.
Yeah.
It is not a blue state.
No.
It is very much an in-between
They have
state.
like 3 counties that Well, they have more than three. But,
maybe half a dozen.
Half a dozen that go Democrat. The rest of the state's Republican. It's just like here, where Hennepin County, Ramsey County, St.
Louis.
Yeah, because of Duluth, you have Moorhead. You have the Democrat strongholds, but the rest of the state is just red as can be.
Yeah, that's true. Michigan is very similar. You have the urban Democrats, the rural Republicans, and the suburbs is where, especially the second and third tier, is where it's fought out all the time.
Yeah. Well, they're saying, like in Michigan, the House district where Lansing is up for grabs. That surprises me. I mean, that's the capital. That'd be like St. Paul, Ramsey County, being up for grabs for CD4 here. That's not happening. Not here.
No, definitely not. It gets worse here.
Yes.
All right. So I'm just going to say watch New York. You should probably watch Michigan too, but
right.
I'm very surprised. But again, you can count on Republicans to screw it up.
Exactly. Someone who's not on the ballot this year is former Brooklyn Park Mayor Jeffrey Lunde as a county commissioner here in Hennepin County.
Your commissioner.
He is my commissioner, and I had a chance to say some things to him last week.
Really? You met him?
I did. And he came, and it was in a group setting. He made it very clear to some people that were a little upset about light rail that right away he's for light rail. And I had an opportunity to say, you know what? I have represented this area for 14 years. And there is nobody... I didn't say nobody. There are very few people in Crystal that want this train to run through here. Because Hennepin County is talking about running the train right up the middle of 81 here. Mm-hmm. Trains are going to come every 10 minutes. And I sat there and I told them, light rail is never going to pay for itself. It's a permanent tax. And the ridership is never going to pay for the operation, let alone the maintenance. He agreed. I told him flat out, that train is coming through North Minneapolis, and with the trends that we see, and especially with the county attorney candidates that we see, you can't tell me that that's going to get better. And you're talking about putting people on the trains to watch for criminal activity. What happens when those people get off the trains when they get up here? That there's nothing that you can do that is going to change that, and you're going to be sending people from North Minneapolis straight up the line. He agreed with that. I told him this has been all about Brooklyn Park. It has been about in the comprehensive plan ever since back at the Botna Boulevard partnership, where it's Target, it's Olympus. You got
25
West.
years it goes back.
Yeah. And he agreed. I said, this city does not want this. This city is upset that nobody listens to us. And it's true. Nobody listens to us. And we're very
nobody
disappointed.
Above City Hall.
Right. And so he sat, he listened to it, but then he's like, well, we got some meetings coming up. You should come in and tell people, what's going on, so that when we build it with the, the accommodations, for your area. No, the accommodation I want is to send it over to Brooklyn Center, or not at all. That I don't want accommodations.
So I
don't want taxpayers' money to fund my issues. I don't want it.
So why was he for it then? Did he explain why he was for it?
Because it's going to get people to work. It's going to get people from one end down to Minneapolis to Brooklyn Park, and Brooklyn Park down to the other one. And of course they are. And of course, and I said this too, you still got to get people to the train stations. I get it. You do the transit-oriented development within 6 blocks. You got more people that are living there.
Still doesn't work.
But it still doesn't work because most of the people still have to use cars and whatever to get to the train, which he agreed with. But yeah, he thinks it's this great thing that's going to get all these underprivileged people where they need to go. And so...
No, it's a way to control them even more. It's a way to direct them.
But I'll say this. Mayor Jim Adams was also there, and he followed up my comments with that. That is exactly the way this city feels. That is exactly the way the people in this city feel, and you need to hear it.
Yeah,
so but as mayor of the city,
I mean, the problem is he heard it and dismissed it.
Right.
Okay, I heard you, but don't care. We're pushing it anyway.
Yep. So keep that in mind 2 years from now when it is Jeffrey Lunde's turn to run again. He likes to come off as a conservative, but this isn't conservative.
Well,
he's already talking about the billions of dollars this is going to cost. And
well, I mean, whether he's conservative or not, I mean... Light rail is a solution in search of a problem. It's just right up there with ranked choice voting as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But it doesn't surprise me. Mr. Lunde has been a hawk for this for many, many, many years. And it doesn't surprise me in the least.
No.
Jay, we got an interesting subject that we're going to pivot to here.
Yes.
We've talked about it before. We've talked about ESG scores.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing we haven't really laid out is how to somehow fight this, and how your local government can fight this. Very hard as an individual, very hard to do this on an island.
Yeah.
But of course, we're community solutions, and I think part of that is we have to give people some ideas, some hope, some... whatever else you want to call it, in fighting this and getting around this and stopping this, because it's clear that our government's not going to stop it either. You have a handful of people, be it Ron DeSantis and a few others.
Yeah.
You know, you can probably count on one or two hands how many people understand this and are upset about it and doing something about it. It's not many.
Right.
You got maybe 5 senators. We all know who they are. Kennedy, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, and you got a handful of governors. And everybody else is pretty much being quiet on this.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you've got some things. You've got some like state auditors and things like that are standing up too. Trying to think specifically West Virginia. You have some anti-ESG legislation. A lot of it revolves around banking and doesn't tackle the social and governance end of it as well. You had something in Idaho and it got shot down because the banks got in with the people in the legislature in Idaho.
Not a surprise.
Not a surprise.
I think it's not a surprise that they're going after the banking, though, because if you can choke off the money or you can get rid of it on the money end, I think it's easier to do the social and governance part. That's just me.
Yeah.
But I also think that the governance in particular can act as the sort of the first line of defense, if you will, if you can't choke off the money.
Right.
And you and I have some thoughts on that, as you might imagine.
Yeah. Well, what?
First off, Jay, refresh our listeners a little bit about ESG. Just give us, as you have several times, but if you're not a long-time listener to the show, I mean, give us a 1 or 2 minute synopsis on ESG.
Okay. So the World Economic Forum, who meets in Davos, Switzerland every year, and it's full of people in government and it's full of people in business, all get together and they meet and they talk about the world's problems, how they think they want to solve the world problems.
It's a meeting of evil.
Yes, it is. because as we've said many times on this show, when you bring government and business together, that is classically what you call fascism. But that's for another discussion. Maybe later this podcast, we'll see. But they get together and they started working on some things with the COVID relief. Before COVID was actually a thing, they had something they worked through on business continuity if there happened to be some sort of coronavirus plague before COVID ever ran rampant, which was amazing. Hopefully that doesn't get us kicked off of YouTube again, but for saying that. But they did. They had that, and then after they've been working on this for a while. So ESG, it has these 3 separate categories where it's all about environmental, passing policies in business and in government and in education and wherever they can get them that it's the critical race theory. It is the LGBTQIA++2 RFLP agenda. It's the trans agenda. It's the all of the stuff that we see coming up in our schools. Calling people birthing persons instead of women, mothers, all of this revolves around the S is the social. I just went into the social stuff. That is the S, that's social. E is the environmental stuff. That is your climate change, the Green New Deal, cutting off fossil fuels, all of this that we see happening around the world, all this crazy stuff to try and fall over themselves to no more combustion engines by 2035. All of this stuff is because of the E in ESG, and then you have the governance part of it, which is how government plays into and supports those policies in business. So that's where you have them all kind of coming together into this fascistic garbage dump, and so these policies then go back to the businesses, go back to the governments, and they get implemented, worked into their, everything they do. In business, they've set diversity goals for who they've got on their board, for what types of employees they have, for who's making in what brackets in banking, that they're not going to lend money to people that are investing into fossil fuels. That all of this plays together into ESG, and then you're assigned a score, and that score can either help you or hurt you. And if it's hurting you, you're not getting funding for your business. You're not going to be able to get business loans. You're not going to be able to get personal loans. You're not going to be able to get a mortgage if your house isn't in the right condition to fight climate change. It's kind of like the Chinese social credit score, but just kind of adapted for Western culture. But we've seen this, like with Canada, where the truckers were protesting, and then they just had their bank account shut off just like that. That is exactly what they're looking to do. And if they ever get the new digital currency, it's programmable so that they are able to just shut it off or not allow it to be used on certain things. Depending on who you are, what you're trying to do, and it's all going to be programmed in, especially just for you, based on your ESG score. So yes.
that's the that's the answer then.
Yes. And so it's pervasive. It's everywhere. It's in the banks. It's in the businesses you work in. It's it's crazy town.
Well, that brings us to this. I mean, how do we go about fighting this? You're a city government, Jay. You're a city councilman. You're a mayor.
Yeah.
Not just to mention what citizens do, but how do we fight this? How do we stop this? How do we not let this creep into this could creep into every facet of your life, every home loan, every bond that's written,
Right.
How in the world do we fight this?
Well, that's great. Great question. And I think we need to kind of look at some of the elements of this and see, because as an overarching principle, it's going to be impossible to root out. You have to look at the various places where it's going in and figure out how you're going to fight it. Because as a city government, you can't really tell a business, hey, you can't require, quotas for hiring, That's just not possible. That's something that a business is going to have to decide on their own, and people who work for those businesses are going to have to decide to vote with their feet on, I'm not willing to work for a business that does this to people. Like, it's not a business. I guess this is education with Minneapolis public schools, how they just decided, okay, so we're going to just fire white teachers and we're not going to fire black teachers. Seniority doesn't matter. Whitey gets laid off first. That is because of ESG. So that is something where, as voters, we have more control. We need to make sure that we do our homework on school board candidates and vote those people out.
Okay, but let's say we vote the right people in.
Right.
Okay, how do they tackle ESG? How do they stop it? How do they? Because I got a few theories on what could happen.
Okay.
If you have an outlaw city or something like that, what's step 1, step 2, step 3? We don't even have to go that far, but I mean, how do you fight ESG creeping into every nook and cranny of your city?
Yeah. Well, it's hard because it's everywhere, like you said before. It's in your parks, it's in your building code, it's in all sorts of things. A lot of these cities get their code from someplace like the International Code Council that has a lot of this stuff already baked in,
Green Building Council.
Yeah, rather than writing their own stuff. And so that makes it difficult too, because you're getting things from other places.
Okay, so stop. First thing you got to do is go through your code.
Yeah.
Go through your laws and regulations.
Take everything out.
Why do we have this here? Because everybody else does?
Right.
Is that the reason?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you one thing because here's one thing that I fear is that the state and federal governments could start tying money to this.
Oh, they will. Yeah.
I mean, what if the state says, well, hey, no local government aid if you don't do A, B, C, D, and E? Who says they can't do it?
Yeah.
No municipal street aid. So it is number one critical. I think even before the ordinances, you have got to have a plan to have your city self-sufficient in dollars. Mm-hmm. Your budget has to be self-sufficient. That's your needs. Police and fire, parks, roads need to be funded 100% by the city. You don't rely on local government aid. You don't rely on grants. You don't rely on the feds. You don't rely on COVID money. You don't rely on street aid. You don't rely on bonding. You have to be financially independent.
Yeah.
I don't see how you could possibly do this without being financially independent.
Yes.
Here's another question. So first off, no bonding. Mm-hmm. You have to pay cash for things, meaning you got to start saving.
Right.
You got to put that money away. You got to pay off your existing stuff.
Yep.
I mean, this could be a long process, Jay. This could take a decade.
It could, to get it all paid off and stuff. But I mean, you can start putting money away today. You can change your direction as far as okay, we know we're going to have these building projects, these reconstruction projects, these street projects coming up. We need to start putting money away.
You can amend the budget at the next council meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's another thing that I fear. We might get back to the money in a second.
Okay.
What if banks decide we're not going to give home loans to people in that city? That city's ESG score isn't good enough. We're not going to,
Absolutely.
How do you fight that?
Well,
yeah, I got an idea.
Here's what some states have done. And if the state won't do it, could you do it as a city? I guess you possibly could. Some states that are fighting this have come up with state statutes that say that they are not going to do business with any company, any banking financial institution that tries to implement ESG scores. Now, when you're looking at a state and all the pension funds and all that kind of stuff, that pulls a lot of weight. Now, at a city, you'd almost have to come up with some sort of a huge fine or, something to hold them accountable. Granted, they could pick up and just move to the next city over, and you don't have any banks in your city. But I think also maybe you'll find some that are willing to do business in your city, some smaller banks, some credit unions, things like that really I think are better anyways, because right now with the way things are going in our economy, and as much as these banks are borrowing from the Fed, they're not setting themselves up for success, and there is going to be a crash at some point in the future the way that we are headed, because they're back dealing in derivatives and everything else.
Well, and let me also add something to that. Is it possible that if you are a city running into this, that you sit down and look, I'm not a business and government getting together, I don't like it.
Yeah.
But to fight this, you'd almost have to get together with credit unions, state banks, and say, look, we're open for business from you guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because those things exist, that they're not part of the FDIC tentacles.
Yeah.
And say, you know what? You're open for business here in this state. You'd almost have to.
Yeah.
Because if you can't get, 99% of homes are bought with somebody else's money.
Yep.
So is it possible they could choke off a city by not granting home loans? Business loans? Hey, you got a business in that city? We're not funding it.
Well, again, if you can work with, small banks, local credit unions, you might find that they have a willingness to be able to step in and do that. I think that you're also going to have trouble with the Small Business Association for people that are trying to start new businesses. Because, again, that's the federal government. And it's one of the departments where they have armed a lot of their agents, too, which I don't understand. There is a trend federally, and it scares me, frankly, that they're arming agents, not just at the IRS, but the Small Business Administration, the FDA, you name it.
I don't understand. It's an enemies list. They're just creating an enemies list. Anybody who disagrees is not towing the line is going to get censored. They're going to get bullied. They're going to get
intimidated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It breeds another question. Do you have to see? I think if one city tries to be an outlaw, that's going to be hard. It's way harder to throw it at multiple targets.
Right.
How much are cities that resist this going to have to work together? And I don't just mean in a region or in a state. I mean all over the country.
Yeah.
I mean, because you could probably find thousands of cities, especially smaller communities, willing to fight this, but maybe not willing to do it alone.
Right. There's a lot of that, too. I don't know. I guess right now, are there a lot? Hard to say, because there are so many.
I think there's a lot that would. I don't know that there's a lot that are right now.
Because I think at the same time, then you're fighting a lot of your city administrators, planning, your city planners, city development directors.
I was going to mention staff a little later, but
and we can come back to that. But I think you're fighting that a little bit too in some of these cities. So even if you have a desire to change things, you're going to be kind of pushing against that. So the question that I would ask then is, again, I go back to, do you have to fight it one thing at a time? Do you have to fight it on a smaller scale? I mean, oh boy. Well, I think you have to identify where it's already at in your city. So that's going through the city code. That's going through, if you're a charter city, going through your charter that is looking at your city staff. How do they usually line up? What do they try to convince you to do? What kind of policies do they try to bring to the council? And being able to look at that, you got to identify everywhere where this is lurking at or beneath the surface and really identify it so that you can first take those things out that are already there. But then, okay, so how do you build a prevention, if you will, to really inoculate yourself against this sneaking into your city? One thing that I think that we need to discuss is that the majority of the cities in Minnesota are what we call statutory cities. Some of them are standard plan, some are statutory A, that's what most of them are, and then there's statutory B. Standard plan are for small cities, and usually there are like 3 council members and then sometimes like a clerk or something like that. They're set up a lot like a township is in that way. Mm-hmm. Then statutory A, you usually have 5 members. You don't have to. It could be 7. But that, it's a little bit different. There's some nuances between statutory A and statutory B. But in either case, and with the standard plan, you're really tying yourself to state statutes, which can change at any time because the legislature can change them, and then the way you do business in your city has to change. So really it's giving but your authority and your independence over to the state legislature. Yeah,
it's almost like, how can you be an independent city when your statutes are tied to the Minnesota state government?
Right.
So how do we change that, Jay? What's the model?
You got to become a charter city.
Now, how do you do that? I don't know how to do that. How do you do that? Can you just declare you're going to be a charter city?
Well, no. I mean, you have to write a charter, and you have to submit it, right?
Submit it to whom? Does the population have to vote on that?
I don't know if the...
I mean, these are dumb questions I'm asking, but I mean, we say become a charter city, but there's a process to becoming one.
Yes.
And a charter city is basically writing your own constitution, if you want to make a comparison. So it's a task that has to be done deliberately, thoughtfully, protecting all sorts of things. It's got to be hard to change. You can't just, like the Constitution, it's not easy to change. So, I mean, when you write your own charter, you become an independent city.
Yeah.
Like Crystal, like Golden Valley, Brooklyn Center is a charter city.
Yes.
St. Louis is a charter city, not for the better.
Right. Well, Minneapolis is a charter city, and that's not
true.
For the better either.
And you've got the New Hopes, the Champlins, so on and so forth that are. I live in Plymouth. They're a statute. They don't have a city charter either. But so we have encourage cities to write their own constitution, if you will.
Right.
And nothing stops them from addressing ESG in that, does it?
Well, not necessarily, but I mean, you have to write that in there. I mean, you can write that into the setup of your city. I mean, you can bring protections into that. One thing is how you set up your government. Almost every city in Minnesota is set up with a weak mayor council system or a council manager system, which means the mayor is just a figurehead at the table with the rest of the council.
The mayor's the head of state. That's all they are.
I don't even know so much. I mean,
figurehead.
Yeah, they make the they kind of come up with the agenda or whatever and lead the meetings, but really it is. There's very few cities that have executive branch gets to have a veto. They're not part of the city council. And the thing is, with these strong mayors, they're full-time positions.
Yeah, we got, 3 or 4 in the whole state? St. Cloud, Minneapolis.
Duluth.
Is Duluth a strong mayor?
Yep.
They might
St.
be the
Paul.
only one. Yeah, I think Melvin Carter is separate.
Yeah, there's a couple others maybe. Yeah, St. Cloud, Duluth, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I don't know about Rochester.
I don't think so.
But
I don't think so.
Yeah, there's not a lot. So because of the nature of government, especially in a smaller city, I think it's hard to find somebody that wants to do that job full time. And so I think, what we need to do is try to develop another way to do a strong mayor from a part-time perspective where they're still the head of the administrative branch and separate from the legislative branch. But that way they're able to be a check on their administration, make sure that these people aren't running amok doing all of this.
There's a way to do that.
Stuff.
There's a way to do that. You could split duties between a city administrator and a mayor. I think there's ways to get that done. You could put you could write that in your charter. That the city manager or the city administrator or whatever you want to call it is in charge of these 5 things, and the mayor is in charge of these. We saw Mark Coran do this up in Oak Grove, where he basically took over when the administrator resigned. I mean, basically because Mark was going to get rid of them. But I mean, he basically took over the city temporarily and showed that you can do this, that the mayor can be an administrator and not be part of a club, which a lot of these administrators are. They're just the same recycled people that you see bouncing from city to city, almost like Catholic priests.
Yeah,
that's terrible. You're terrible. Yeah, you're terrible. But you are going to fight city staff, Jay, but I want to get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So looking at a charter,
yes,
that can render a city independent, and the type of language that can be used, and I agree. I think the separation of powers is where you really are going to have the protections for the citizens, because you don't have it in hardly any cities. And I don't know if Minneapolis may have a strong mayor, but he ain't all that strong. I think 12-year-old girls could beat him in arm wrestling.
Yeah.
So you got to elect the right people to make that work. But how about getting around staff?
Right.
Because staff probably will resist a charter.
Yeah. That's probably true, unless they have a hand in writing it.
But of course, if they don't, and of course they'll try to.
Yeah.
They'll try to have a hand in it.
Absolutely.
Because they'll want to protect themselves,
mm-hmm.
In that regard. So how do we get around city staff? And by the way, ESG, this can go for counties. This can go for school districts. We're using cities as kind of our big thing here.
Yeah.
But I mean, counties and school districts issue bonds. They it's...
Yeah.
Counties certainly get state and federal money.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it can be done through them too.
Right. Well, I think Minnesota, if I remember, Minnesota statute allows for a county administrator in a way, not a county administrator. Somebody that is like a mayor, I believe, but none of the counties do it. I believe that is allowed by law. All of them, it's just you pick your county board members, your county commissioners, and they each are in charge of a section, and then they rely on county staff. Well, here's the thing. How do you get around working with them? First, you've got to let them know who's in charge. They are employees that serve at the pleasure of the council or the county board or whatever. They have to understand the relationship, and they're still going to try to push their luck. They're still going to try to get things done around you. I've seen it in cities where the council is like, remember, you work for us, and they still try to do things behind the scenes to undermine what the council does. But you just have to be vigilant. Now, with a city or a county, they employ and sign contracts for the administrator. The administrator or manager then is the one who hires the rest of the staff. So that insulates the staff for the most part. But, if the administrator isn't doing their job and employing the type of staff that you would like them to move in the direction that you're asking them to move in, then by all means, you have a right to call that that administrator, that manager into account. And you have to assert your authority over them. It's like anything else. If you have kids and you just allow them to go get cookies whenever they want cookies, and then they don't eat their meal, and it screws everything up with their health, and they get cavities, that's your fault as a parent, because you did not lay down the law when you said no cookies and you let them have cookies. Same thing with city staff and county staff and school staff. You have to say, we are in charge. Nope, you're not going to do that because that did not come through us. This is the direction we're moving in. These are the things I want you to find out. These are the projects I want you to work on.
And by the way, this is the other thing, too. This can be written into a charter.
Absolutely.
Somebody's duties. It also can be written into a city administrator's contract. It is a breach of contract if you do A, B, C, and D, and it can be a terminatable offense.
Yes.
So, again, don't tell me, well, it's the city administrator that hires this and hires this. No. You set up the parameters. You don't tell them who to hire, but you've got to set up the parameters for that.
Yeah.
And that is on the mayor and the council.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, it is, period. And I think many of them have abdicated those duties. Many of them separate themselves. In some cities, I think the only person they really communicate with is the administrator.
Yeah.
And that's just wrong that the people that I elect aren't the people really running the show. I just have such a problem with that, Jay.
Yeah.
No matter how good an administrator is, no matter how, I just have a real bad issue with them being there, no matter who's in charge of the city for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah.
Where it just becomes theirs, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And getting around that staff is man, it is really a tough job, and you're going to have a constant fight on your hands.
Yeah.
But I think there's ways to do it. I mean, you've got to bring people in who share your vision.
Absolutely. And it can be hard to find because of the networks that are out there to help find these people.
But then again, screw the network.
Yeah.
Screw the network. You can hire a campaign or a job firm and tell them what you want.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
You'd be better off not using somebody in government.
Yeah, exactly. What's wrong with bringing private sector people in?
Yeah.
What is wrong with that? Why do you have to have a career in government?
Ugh.
And look, there's legitimate government functions. They're legitimate people who are public servants. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm not going to dump on all of them. But I come back and I say, okay, you have to bring in new people to a certain extent to get a vision like this through. I mean, like how are you going to do it? Okay, you got a community development director who's gone to the American Planning Association. They've gone to all their workshops and all their. You're not going to reform that knucklehead. You're not gonna.
Right.
You have to figure out a way to either get rid of them or get around them.
Uh-huh.
And again, you can. It is up to the council to set policy.
Mm-hmm.
You put it in a city manager's contract, and if they don't follow the policy and the people under them don't, they get canned.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. You have to be that way. You have to be ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be a people pleaser. You don't represent the employees, represent the city. So that's where the people who have the backbone, I mean, it makes it doubly important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, fighting that staff, man, that's...
Yeah. It's not easy.
No, that's climbing Mount Everest.
But I think it's necessary, too. You know, because nature abhors a vacuum. And if you're not leading that, they will. It's that simple.
Yeah, but I mean, and here's the other thing, too. You have to somehow partner with others, like I mentioned before. I just think it's so critical. I think, take COVID as an example.
Yeah.
When some businesses and stuff tried to defy the governor, look at how 1 or 2 or 3 can be dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, heavy fines. It's they send the law enforcement over every day.
The bullies,
harass them. Yeah,
but if hundreds of businesses did that,
yeah, it'd be
you can't fight them.
Impossible to shut down. Yeah,
it would be impossible.
Right.
So does the same thing have to happen to city? Does a group, and I'm not big on best practices and all that crap and all those sayings, but do cities have to who want to fight this have to get together and counter the big groups that are going down on them? The League of Cities, do they need a counterbalance?
It doesn't hurt, of course, behind you, some sort of group that's willing to stand on your behalf. And, that helps. It's a lot harder to do it alone.
Well, and let me even take it a step further. We live in Hennepin County. Mm-hmm. Hennepin County is going to embrace every drop of this.
Yes.
What if the county lays down the law in a city? You're not fixing your county road. Where have we heard that before?
Yeah.
Do what we want.
Right over on 81.
Yeah.
I
mean, could the county, they could send the sheriff's office over there.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to plow your county road.
Right.
Do you have to be prepared to take them on too?
Yeah. And be prepared that you're not going to get money for things, COVID funding or things like
financial
that.
Financial independence is so critical. I just think nothing can happen without it.
Right.
Because you can fight this, you can write a charter and fight this, but if you're going to borrow money, where are you going to do it from?
Right. Now, that's great on the governance end of this, but what about from a business end? Let's say you have banks that won't give loans, and we kind of briefly touched on that. What about it's spread into the medical industry too? Like, we're going to give preference to underserved communities, and Whitey's just going to have to wait. Is there something cities can do about that?
Well, I think that violates every drop of the United States Constitution.
Yeah, well, who's going to enforce it?
Well, I mean, that's a good question because I don't know. Can you fine them? Can you shut them down? Can you not give them permits? I mean,
I mean, in that respect, cities do have some power.
You shut off their water. I mean, look, L.A. tried to do that to businesses that wouldn't comply with COVID.
They sure did, didn't they? They
and
threatened to shut off their water.
And again, I'm not sure that, those are bullying tactics, but it's also, how do you fight it if, you pay? Look, and again, emergency things aren't laws, okay? It's mayors declaring themselves dictators. You put in laws and they don't follow them. I'm guessing you can deal with that in the licensing process.
Yeah.
You can deal with that in taxes.
Yeah.
You can deal with that in fines. You can deal with that in utilities. I mean, I don't know if that's the smart way to just take them on head on. I think you need to expose it. That's another thing you can do at a city level. Is really expose that. Use that bully pulpit.
Now, you might drive businesses out of your city, and you've got to be prepared for that. But what do you do?
Well, again, it's funny. I hear every city talk about embracing small business, loving small business. Yet, who do they subsidize? The big guys. And I'm not saying we should subsidize, but maybe you create that small business atmosphere.
Yeah.
You create that atmosphere that maybe isn't in the city next door. You got lower taxes. You got less regulation. You've got,
Get your business up and off the ground quicker.
Exactly. You got fewer permits and crap that they have to do. I mean, I think, again, it's something that takes a lot of thinking. I think I would try to work with them as much as possible and not try to make it so adversarial.
Right.
But I think the whole idea of whitey go home, whitey stay away, I think is so despicable.
Yeah.
That that business almost deserves what it gets. Now again, you want to serve underserved communities or what you think are that, I have no issue with that. But if I served a community and excluded blacks or excluded Hispanics, I'd probably be banished to another country. I'd be on elbow with Napoleon's grave. I would be gone.
Yeah.
Racism is racism, no matter who it's against.
Right.
But I think, again, it has to be exposed, which I don't think it really has been. And I think it has to be fought at these introductory levels as much as it can be. And look, are you going to run into some companies that just aren't going to do it? Yeah, but you know what? Again, they can be isolated. They can be shamed, just like is done the other way.
Right.
So, but again, I don't like having an adversarial relationship with the business community, even though I criticize them a lot.
Yeah.
Somebody has to provide jobs. Somebody has to provide goods and services. And I don't think it's up to a city to handpick them.
Right.
I think it's up to a city to create the atmosphere and from that point on, stand back from it.
And that's exactly it. I mean, we've got to decouple these businesses from their relationship with government.
Right. That's part of why they're in bed with ESG.
Yeah.
If you're a business and you want a loan, can't beat them, join them.
A lot of people, and especially libertarians, are saying things like, well, the businesses have the right to do this because it's the free market. No, it's not the free market because you've got government intervention. And the government intervention negates, the free choice of the business to operate on market values. Rather, they're being instructed what to do.
We don't have a free market.
No.
We haven't had a free market in a long, long time.
Yeah.
I hate to say.
I agree.
I just don't think we have that. Here's another thing too. I mean, how about you treat all businesses the same?
Yeah, that's
stop
good.
giving, what do you want to bet these businesses that get TIF, get all these tax breaks? And what do you want to bet their businesses that are high on ESG?
Oh yeah, a lot of times,
You think
especially with a
Target
lot of
isn't up
these-
there? You think Olympus isn't up
yeah.
there? You think Walmart's not up there?
Even these development companies that come in
Very
and build
much
these.
so.
Oh yeah, they're so careful to
Part of
follow
it,
all of the
though-
green agenda stuff.
And it's also the race stuff because
Oh,
they
yeah.
get government contracts. What do government contracts for? X amount of your people are going to be
Equitable
minorities.
housing, yeah.
Exactly. You're going to build this. You're going to build that. And to get the business, they get in bed with them. And so
Right.
the whole public-private partnership stuff really needs to take a back. We got to get rid of that somehow.
Yes.
Because that's not fair. It isn't fair. It's not the free market. Libertarians are full of shit on that, and they know it. They just, again, libertarians live in this dream world that everything is some Ron Paul utopia. You have to deal with what's in front of you and stop trying to win arguments. And I keep having that argument with libertarians, and they listen about as well as a 2-year-old. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating because their answer to everything is the market, the market. Well, we don't have a market.
Right. Yeah, it would be one thing if each business was individually making these
No, they're
on
pressured
their own.
to do it.
They're pressured, yeah.
The whole thing about it free, it's all in theory. It's all in a Austrian economics textbook.
Right.
It's not the reality. So
We haven't touched on schools much. That's part of the community as well.
Yeah.
And they are heavily implementing the social part of this, and they are implementing the climate change part of this. I don't know what to do because it is so ingrained in the fabric of the schools and in what they teach, how they teach it, how they approach just their method of running the school and the policies. You look at discipline, you look at not tardiness, but when kids are gone. Truancy. It's in graduation standards. It's in how grades are given out. It is in how classrooms are run. It is all of it
it's
across
just insanity.
the board.
It's insanity.
It's not just about CRT. Yeah, that's a big part of it because they're teaching our kids terrible things in CRT.
Social and emotional learning.
Social and emotional learning, which is the chassis, I've said before, that carries the CRT, the trans agenda, the LGBT agenda, all of it.
So, but again, these are independent school districts. States set standards. Schools figure out how they're going to get there.
But the Department of Education at the state is pushing down on the districts with a lot of this crap too.
So, and schools are mostly funded by the state.
Right.
They're not independent in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
So how do they fight back? And not only that, the teachers' unions are pushing this. Not necessarily the teachers,
Yeah.
but the heads of the unions, they're all in bed with this stuff too.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got the Department of Education. This is almost worse because you've got the Department of Education, you've got the teachers' unions, you got the staff. How the hell is a school board member? Where do you start there?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be financially independent. That's not possible, like the way a city could. A county can't really be either because they have state mandates.
Right.
So, I mean, as a school, it's got to be 10 times as hard.
And it's in all the curriculum. And you've got, 5 companies that produce curriculum?
Four, I think. It's McGraw-Hill, Houghton Mifflin,
Yeah.
Pearson. There's maybe one or two others. There's not many. I mean, I'm sure they're all in bed with that.
Yeah. Because they're in California.
And their
they're
contracts.
they're teaching the California standards.
And their contracts are contingent on them getting what they are being told.
Right. That's true.
I'm going to say this straight out. The way to do it is to get out of the public school system. I honestly, I think that and you're seeing somewhat of an exodus here. I don't know what that magic number is that has to get to, probably 51%. But you're seeing more and more families question this, more and more switch schools or do these pods or something like that. I don't know that it's solvable in the schools. I really don't.
And there are some state statutes around that kind of stuff too. Like if you're going to homeschool, you have to have somebody that's licensed to teach or somebody that is overseen by somebody with either a license or a bachelor's degree in education. Or
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I thought they just had to pass the tests and...
a parent can always homeschool their kids, but to put them in a pod with somebody else's kids and stuff.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's a little different.
So the pods are now being regulated to probably dissuade people from doing it.
Yeah.
So, which is funny that they have a licensed teacher. You have to have a licensed teacher. You and I could teach civics better than any licensed teacher I've ever met.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, I'm guessing a lawyer could teach the law better than most teachers could.
Right.
Just guess there.
Yeah.
So it's strange how you have to have a license to teach, yet if you do that for a living, you can't teach it.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Not unless you're overseen by somebody with a bachelor's in education or.
If I'm an accountant, I can't teach a class. If I wanted to run an accounting school out of my basement, and I'm an accountant, I do it for a living. I've got a CPA.
Yes.
I cannot teach it to people in a classroom setting. I could volunteer to.
Right.
But I can't get paid to do it?
You can't just do it on your own
accounting school
and have it count towards their graduation credits. Yes.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Who would you rather learn accounting from? Somebody doing it or somebody teaching it out of a textbook?
I'd rather not learn it personally. But
and I want to say something too. You do need the textbook stuff too.
Yeah.
That's important. You do need that. But you also need the career end of it.
Right.
I think. But
so
hell do I know.
But so how do we tackle that then? Obviously we've got to, again, go to the policies that govern a school district and root out everything that is ESG.
Man.
All of the social stuff, it's all got to come out. Every last little bit of it.
That sounds Herculean. That sounds feudal.
Yeah, it has to happen though, because that's how it's governed right now.
We're going to die before any of this ever happens.
I hope not. I mean, really, if a school board wanted to tackle that and they just started within a couple of years, I would assume, just like with when you redid the city code for Crystal. I mean, how many pages was that? But you guys did it.
It was a gazillion. It was way too many.
Yeah, but it's done for now.
It is, but man, I think at a school district, you look at the new teaching standards. I mean, I don't know. I think one thing you have to fight for is independence, and our school districts are not independent in any way, shape, or form. Many of the things they bitch about are things that they've advocated for.
Yeah.
I think that the school system is going to collapse under its own weight.
Yeah.
It's going to fall apart.
I hope so. I mean, you're going to have people
I'm not cheering for it because these kids don't get a do-over here.
I know.
Whose kid is going to be part of the collapse? So
that's what upsets me. You're messing with people's lives,
Hey, dude, you got a kid in public school yourself. I mean...
For now.
But it's like I say, your kid don't get a do-over, man.
I know.
Oh,
I know. Trust me, I've been wrestling with that very question myself.
But you should be. I mean, it's too bad that you have to, too. It's too bad that your parents have to do that and have to be so on top of all this. They shouldn't have to be. They send their kid to school. They shouldn't have to worry about that stuff.
Right.
They just shouldn't.
if you have the means as a parent to remove your kid from the public school system, you need to do it. It's gotten to that point where it's grotesque. They've got pornography in the school libraries. They teach it in the health classes. They teach crazy ideas. They don't tell you parents. They try to convince kids, hey, do you really know what gender you are? Maybe you're a different gender. And then if you decide you're a different one, we're not going to tell the parents. They are underhanded. They are playing dirty. They are not doing what's right by families, not doing what's right by kids, trying to get them in position where they're taking puberty blockers and other drugs that are going to mess them up for a long time, if not permanently, and all without any knowledge of the parent. The schools are in on this. You've got to get your kid out if you have the means to do it. Some of you don't have the means to do it, and I don't know what to do in your situation. You know, I feel like I'm in that situation to some degree, and it's scary, you know, but there has to be some way, some alternative where the people that are pushing this are either brought to account and things change, or there is a different alternative for people like us altogether.
You know, I tell you what, the powers that be aren't going to let that happen.
No, but we got to change the powers that be then. I mean, like our last show about the Robbinsdale School District and that candidate forum, how many of those candidates were pushing for all of the wrong things?
Every one of them.
Every one of them. So where's the parents? The parents are upset about what's going on. Why is there not a single parent running that hates this stuff and is willing to stand on different principles?
Probably, and I'm just guessing, Jay, there's strength in numbers.
Yeah.
Do you want to be the one person trying to run? We know people like this.
Yeah.
Fighting everybody all the time, being the target of everybody's hate-filled rhetoric.
Yeah.
They just say, F it, I don't need it.
Yeah.
I get better things to do.
Unfortunately, when really we just need you to stand a little longer till we can get you some help.
I don't know. I think it's rough. I think the schools, I mean, I don't want to say I've given up on them, and I haven't, but I have.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. There are days I wish I was a parent, and there are days I'm so glad I'm not. And I hesitate saying that to my wife. I hesitate saying, wish I'd met her when I was younger, but the truth is, I'd be going bananas right now. Yeah. I'd be going bananas at the shutdowns, the masks, the curriculum. They'd hate my guts so much they'd probably have wanted signs with my picture on them at the school district. Don't let this guy in. No service for this guy. Because I'd be all over it, and it would just gnaw and eat at me like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
So maybe it's good that I get so many friends with kids, you included. I just feel so bad. Like, how do you fight all of this? How do you shoot at all these targets?
It is a lot of targets because it's schools, it's state, it's county,
banks,
it's city,
it's companies,
it's business,
it's boards of directors, it's foundations, it's charities. Even churches have been corrupted with some of this stuff. I mean, it's almost every institution you can think of.
Yeah, to see churches that are putting the LGBT agenda ahead of Jesus, to see that they're okaying abortion when there's nothing in the Bible that even remotely allows for that.
Why are churches doing that?
To gain members. A lot of these are mainline churches that are dying, and I think it's to keep the doors open, or they've let people into leadership that have corrupted the rules and the belief systems of the churches.
Yeah, but
and just turned it into Nutville.
But you keep the doors open at the same time you lose everything you're preaching.
Yeah.
You bring in things that are against the scripture you're teaching, you have no credibility as a church.
Well, a lot of them have stopped teaching that stuff though too, and they teach other things, or they don't teach out of the Bible at all.
How can that be?
Did you see there was a video of a church in New York that decided to have Trans Sunday, and they had these drag queens dancing up and down the aisles and up front getting praised by the pastor or whatever it was.
No, I did not.
Oh, it just made my stomach turn. It was so vile and just.
How did the congregation react?
Great. They're clapping and cheering, and just like these stupid parents that bring their kids to these drag shows.
What are they
clap
thinking?
And they cheer and they.
What are they thinking?
They need to have their kids CPS'd. If I trusted CPS, which I don't.
No. Well, but you know what? To be honest with you, putting your kid in the system sometimes there's no. You don't want a kid there. You want as few kids in there as possible.
Exactly.
Because who says government's going to come up with a better
child
solution?
Abuse, and
of course,
these parents
it's child abuse.
Are guilty of neglect and abuse by putting their kids in front of sexualized men dancing around as women, flashing their underwear, and having kids stick money into their clothes. I'm sorry.
That's
not okay.
Despicable.
Ever. Not okay ever.
It's not okay for adults to do that, to be quite honest with you.
Right. But you're going to have kids do it?
And these are the same people who want to whitewash history because they might feel bad. We're going to rename schools. We're going to, they can't do anything. They can't buy a gun or vote or drive until they're 48. Yeah. They can stay on their mom's health insurance till they're 52. But at the same time, we're going to throw this in-your-face sex stuff. I don't get, the weird part is I feel there's such a backlash, but yet I don't feel there's a backlash.
It's because it's been squashed by media. They won't talk about it. Yeah, it's happening.
It has, but again, I go back to despite that, you've seen victories despite that.
Right.
You point to Virginia, Loudoun County. I mean, when the fight happens, it can't be ignored.
Right.
They'll try to, but at the end of the day, victories are what matter. It's all about winning and losing, and I hate to put it that way.
Yeah. Again, last week, we've got candidates running for a school board that are unwilling to ban any books, and they put it that way, banning books. It's not about banning books. It is about protecting kids from, you wouldn't stick, maybe they would now, some pornographic magazine on the stands in that library, but maybe they would now.
Well, would you let me tell you
just
something.
Leave the internet open for kids to cruise whatever.
I'm a strong Second Amendment supporter, but I would not put weapons materials in front of 8 and 10-year-olds.
Right.
Hey, here's how to go buy a gun on the black market. Here's how to put a bomb together.
Right.
I would never put that in front of kids, and I'm a strong Second Amendment guy, and I would never do that.
Right.
Because they don't have the capacity. They need to go through. Look, I started shooting guns when I was 6 years old.
Yes.
Okay, and back then it was no issue at all. I don't remember, but my dad, my grandfather, my uncle, they were all on me. A gun wasn't a toy. I had to go to class. I had to learn how to shoot this stuff. I did target practice, but you don't just they didn't put a gun in my hand and just tell me to come back with dinner. It wasn't Davy Crockett. Okay, so, the point being, there are things that kids shouldn't see. It's just the truth. We should let them be kids.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, the biggest worry, that I had was the Twins score and I never really fully understood. My parents never involved me in adult stuff. Neither did the schools. I'll say what you want about Robbinsdale District. When I went there, okay, none of that stuff was in my face. Not one drop of it.
Yeah.
Now, looking back on it, the way I see things now, maybe there was 10% of that going on, but it was not overt.
Right.
As far as pushing an agenda or pushing a certain point of view, there was a little bit of that, but not much.
Right.
And of course, I look cynically at everything now. But I was allowed to be a kid. And we don't allow that anymore.
Yeah.
And we don't even allow 5-year-olds to be kids anymore. They're all seen as that person's a potential voter. They're going to be an adult someday. We got to shape their mind.
Right. Well, and I think, I always hesitate to make more laws. I think we have too many laws. We have way too many laws, and people can't follow all of them. However, when it comes to protecting our children, I think that obscenity laws need to be updated to regulate some of this. You don't put a kid in front of a drag show.
Well,
you don't do it.
I'm going to say something even. Where are the feminists in this?
Yeah.
Where are the Me Too people?
Right.
You want a guy dancing as a woman in front of you, the Me Too crowd?
Yeah.
That hates men, that treats men like garbage, that thinks men are predators? You take that view, but yet you're okay with your 5-year-old seeing that?
Mm-hmm.
You got to be out of your minds. Where are these people? Where are these champions for women?
Right.
Where are they? They are dead silent.
Right.
They are cowards. They are they are in bed with this, even if they aren't. And I'll tell you what, too, Jay. I'm gonna say something too that may piss people off. I think that so many people on the left are opposed to this too.
Yeah.
I really think that good, honest people who may be liberal on some issues, they may be pro-abortion or whatever, but I think they have a problem with this, and I think they're afraid to speak out. I think they're afraid of what fellow liberals are going to think. They're afraid because they're not used to being called the things people on the right are.
Right.
Like me, I don't care. You can call me whatever you want. I've been called it before.
Right.
Okay, but I think there are a lot of people on the left. I think the left has to speak out. I think ultimately it's not going to stop. If it becomes a Republican-Democrat issue, that's the worst thing that can happen.
Uh-huh.
It has to be a right and wrong issue.
Absolutely.
And I think people on I just implore you people on the left who do not like this, you've got to say something. Forget the R and the D. Forget who wins the next election. Okay? Just drop that for a minute.
Yeah.
And you've got to speak out because you got to stop being a coward.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but I really do believe that. I really, especially among people over 40, over 50, I think they hate this. But they just are so afraid to be called a racist or a transphobe or whatever that they just sit there and look the other way.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of that. I just don't get the parents that are cheering and clapping, and
There's a lot of dumbasses out there. What else can you say? There's a lot of idiots. You look, you need a license to go fishing, you need a license to drive a car. Any idiot can have a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And again, I'm not for a China policy. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, and I think too many people have ceded things to the public schools. They've it's the school's job to teach this, not mine. No, the parent is first. The school is second.
Absolutely.
Actually, I take that back. The church should be there, then the school.
Yes.
It's family, God, school. I mean, that's how it really should go. That's how it went in my life when I was growing up. It was family, faith, school.
Yeah.
So
I probably approached that putting faith first and then family and then
right.
But school maybe way down the list. Like
well, when I think of things that influenced me, it was the four big things in my life were family, my church, my school, and my friends and my sports and all that. And those were the big things around me growing up. And they all played a different role. They all influenced me this way or that way. Some were more important than others.
Yeah.
So maybe faith is foundation for the family, however you want to put it. But, I think so many people have just don't have faith in their life, so they have no sense of right and wrong. They have no convictions. They have no sense that there's something bigger than we are. And two, I think they've ceded way too much to the schools. The school's job to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
It's the school's job to, be everything to your kid. And it isn't. It's your job first, and the school is, everything has to be reinforced at the home.
Yeah.
So
it makes me so sad because I think about, okay, you've got the baby boomers who have all this power that they accumulated since the 60s. They have wanted to be in power and have ruined everything. And then they have recruited Generation Z on the other side and the millennials to accept all of this garbage that they've been putting out. Well, my generation, Generation X, has just
mine too
thrown up their hands and gone along with the participation trophies and gone along with, okay, the school wants to do that, we'll let them do that. Okay, I gotta work, I gotta, and it's just a shame. Well, come on, grow up. We're in our 40s, we're in our 50s. Let's.
So you keep saying we.
Generation X.
Oh, okay.
We.
By my 40s?
Yes.
Yeah. You have to remind me of that all the time.
All the time.
You're older than me.
Not by much.
Well, by enough to where I'm going to constantly remind you of it.
Yeah.
You were around in the Hoover days. So it wasn't. Okay, I getting back to this ESG stuff. I mean, I'm the incurable pessimist.
Yeah.
And I think this will get way worse before it gets better. I think it will take decades to fight. I don't know that we can fight it. I want to try, but
we have to.
I just think. I think it's here, and I think it's not going anywhere.
I know I've said that other things are the social emotional learning is the chassis for all this stuff. ESG is the chassis for a one world government. I mean, really, or at least one that,
which we've been drifting to,
separate is run the same no matter where you go.
Which we've been drifting to for the last. How long?
Yeah.
I mean, 50, 100 years we've been drifting toward one world government, maybe not always at the same speed.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the European Union was a step toward world government. The UN was a step toward world government. The financiers and all the people who try to control us, it's all a step toward world government. All the corporate interests and all that. I'll tell you what. I'm about as anti-corporate as I have ever been in my life.
Yeah,
me too. I just hate them. I don't know what to say. I just get up and leave. Go somewhere else. I hope you go somewhere else and fall off the side of the ocean. I think corporations, honestly, are one of the worst things in this country, along with lawyers and doctors and, a bunch of other people I don't like.
Well, a lot of these big corporations, I mean, they've got more money than some countries. They've got more power than a lot of countries.
They're global. They know no borders. They know no bounds. They answer to nobody except a very small board of directors who they handpick.
Yep, and they're in league with the government. It's not the free market.
They crush competition. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll tell you what. How I Met Your Mother, the show. Okay, Barney Stinson, which is Neil Harris's character, said something, and it is so stuck with me. He meant this to be funny, but a great thing about humor is that the best humor has an element of the truth in it.
Yeah.
And he talked about who corporate America wants. They want people who seem bold, seem like risk takers, but actually do nothing.
Yeah.
That's who corporations want. And he's dead right.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote that line is so dead right. They're totally dead right. That's what they want. They want people actually doing something will get you fired.
Yeah. It's true. If you take a stand for what you believe in and it's not what the corporation wants you to do, you really are a slave to that corporation. You are to assimilate their value systems. You are to assimilate their methodology. You are to really become just a worker bee for the corporation.
You are to, accept their green stuff, accept their gay and lesbian stuff.
Yep.
And if you rock the boat in any way, it's check mark against your name, no matter how the hell good you are at your job.
Absolutely.
You got to push their diversity. It's terrible. It's corporations. And by the way, let me see something else too. If you corporations have all this money to give away, I got some ideas. Would you give it to your employees? If I'm Target and I want to improve the lives of black people, instead of giving it to Black Lives Matter, now I know it's a tax write-off that way, which is another law that should be changed. You shouldn't get subsidized for giving money away. That kind of defeats the purpose.
Right.
Imagine if you got subsidized for your offering at church or something. Yeah. Okay. I got an idea. Why don't you give all your employees huge raises instead?
Yeah.
Give that black guy making $12 an hour, give him 15 or 18. You don't think that would improve his or her life more than giving it to some organization who knows where the hell that money goes?
Right. Well, they won't do that, though.
Hand out scholarships
to
go to college. But no, they don't do that. The easiest thing that they could do, they don't do.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, too. I mean, you mentioned Target.
I don't know that Target does that. I'm just picking on them.
Let's just say I know somebody that works at Target. Target had come out and said, hey, we made like $5 billion. I think that was the number in the first quarter of this year. Hooray, hooray, hooray. And then shortly thereafter came out with an email saying we're cutting everybody's hours. Yeah, it's stuff like that
it's impossible. You can't defend it.
Yeah.
I can't defend it. And let me tell you something. I've tried to defend businesses. I've tried to defend because I believe in lower taxes. I believe in smaller government. I can't defend what corporations do in this country. I cannot defend it.
Right.
So they're an enemy of the people. I don't know how to say it any but nicer than that. Mm-hmm. Or worse. I don't know. Jay, I hate you.
What do you mean?
I'm depressed again.
Oh, sorry.
You did it. I just want you to know you did it.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm the incurable pessimist. Well, I don't think we're going to fight ESG. I think we're going to drown under it.
I don't know. I hope not. Well, I'm going to fight.
I don't know if I'm going to fight or not. I might just sit this one out. I might just say, you know what? It just can't be done. I mean, it just can't be done. I know that's terrible.
Yeah.
Jay, because I'm such a pessimist, you're going to have to try here. You have to try real hard.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do it or not. Styling and profiling, jet flying, limousine, riding, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun. The women love him. The men are jealous of him, ladies and gentlemen. With the cowardly lion haircut and all. Jason Bradley, take it away.
Thank you. You know, I look at today's subject, and it does seem like something we're drowning in. It seems like there's no way out. Like there's nothing that we can do because it's so pervasive. It's everywhere in every sector of our lives, and we just cannot get away from it. But I believe we got to try. I don't think we can go on ignoring it and turning a blind eye and just saying, things will correct themselves. Things are not going to correct themselves because this has been orchestrated from the beginning. There are people that want to take this country down, and this is their best way that they see to do it. So, how do we change that? When you have people that are this sold out to something, how do you do it? Because they're not going to change their stripes. You're not going to change yours either. So we have this stalemate. There is no way at all to change the structure of things if we're unwilling to throw some skin in the game. We have to fight because we're up against it. We're up against it in government, in the courts, in our legal system, in the schools, with the companies we do business with the businesses we try to run, even with just how we do our day to day. We've got to keep things where they belong, and it's hard to do. It's hard to keep a proper perspective on a lot of this stuff because we think, it's just once, we'll just let it slide. But that's where things shift. That is where the loss begins. The first time you let something slide, that you choose not to speak out the truth, that you choose to just take a walk past and not figure out how to speak against something. Now, granted, you don't want to be seen as the perpetual demonstrator that is shouting at this and shouting at that and carrying signs for this and carrying signs for that, but you have to stand. And that goes back to the song at the beginning. Stand up. And you have to just, once you've done everything to stand, continue to stand. You cannot break down. You cannot break down. The time has come where we have to strengthen ourselves, where we have to dig deep into our innermost being, and we have to rise up with a righteous anger and say, no, not in my city, not in my school district, not in my banks, not in my government. None of it is okay, and it must stop now. And you stand. And when they come at you, you stand. And when they threaten to take things from you, you stand. When they threaten to fine you, you stand. When they threaten to kick your kids out of class, you stand. When they threaten to take you to court, you stand. And it's scary, but it's necessary. You have to stand against it. And no matter what happens, what comes your way, it has to be confronted head on. I know we can do it. I know we've got enough people in this state that are willing to stand. We thank you for listening to us week in and week out. But unless we put action behind our words, it really does us no good. So this is where you got to figure out where you fit in. How can you help? We need your help. We need your assistance. And so we just ask that you spread these words far and wide. That you stand there and you do your best day by day to not allow the enemies of our freedom to get the upper hand. If you're willing to jump in, to start a podcast, to begin planning to run either in an odd year election next year or maybe 2 years from now, or to build an organization that is going to recruit people for the purpose of running in races, let us know. We can help you. Get a hold of us at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. We will get a hold of you and we will keep moving forward. Anything else and we lose permanently. That's all I got to say. But that's enough. until we begin to get this and we start putting these things together. What are you going to do? We're so grateful. And together we can do this. We love you, Minnesota. But now it's your turn to get to work. Take my life, caught a break between the lines. Don't let me be. If I get too caught up in my